I've just come back from taking pictures in the Sacramento Delta, and I'm looking through the shots to see if there are any potential paintings. Usually I'll take the most promising ones into Photoshop and try out different crops and modifications. A few of those I'll prepare for use in the painting studio. Let me take you through just one example. Here's one of the shots that I like the best. It looks a little dark in this JPEG, but I can see from looking at the histogram in the upper right that it does have a full set of values, so it can be fixed. Before starting to experiment, I like to duplicate the original background layer as a fallback position. That way I can fearlessly make adjustments to the duplicated copy. I'm also going to create a new layer, fill it in with 50% gray, and move it to just above the original. This will keep me from accidentally seeing past any layers that I might create on top. When I take photos, I'll often deliberately underexpose a bit to make sure that I don't blow out the highlights. It's relatively easy to lighten up the shadow in a photo like this. I'll use the shadow highlight option in adjustments. Boosting the gain of the shadow slider will open things up, and I can see the result graphically in the histogram window. The image starts looking better as the mid-tone bulge moves towards the center of the range. I get the feeling this photo is not quite level, and I can confirm this by seeing that the bridge strut at the far right does not run parallel with the vertical edge of the image. I'll drag some guidelines off Photoshop's left-hand ruler and put them in various places across the image to serve as reference. Then I'm going to transform my duplicated layer by rotating it slightly. I'll do this by selecting Transform, Rotate, and using my cursor to drag one corner until things look better. If there was perspective distortion, I would probably use the Transform, Distort option to move each corner independently. When I'm happy with the result, I can go up to the View menu and clear out those guides. Notice that my tilting has created some blank wedges at the upper left and lower right, where the gray layer is showing through. It would be fairly easy to fill those in artificially with Photoshop magic tricks, but since this image is just for my own reference, I won't bother. So I have the idea that this scene might crop well to a 24 by 30 canvas. So I'm going to create a white matte layer with those proportions. With the rectangle marquee tool selected, I'll choose Fixed Ratio from the Style portion of the menu and type in those numbers. Now, when I drag a box in the middle of the image, it will automatically create a selection of the correct proportions. Then under the Selection menu, I'll choose Inverse to select everything outside my box, and then fill it with white. I can then move this matte around to find a composition I like. If I resize it by pulling on a corner, I habitually hold down the Shift key so that the proportions don't change. It often helps to zoom out on the view while doing this. I'm definitely going to lose a section off the left side to create a better balance. While I'm here, I'll make some temporary layers and use the brush tool to experiment with some invented compositional elements. I like this foreground element, this slice of grass on the near bank. It's moving in a direction that mirrors some of the short axis structure of the bridge, and I think it acts as a good counterpoint to the strong lengthwise push. I'm also going to consider building up some of those trees in the background as kind of a break against the eye being let out the back of the scene. This is as good a time as any to adjust the color. Just a little tweaking with the hue and saturation sliders on a new adjustment layer. That'll be a good reference to paint from. But for the image I want to use to transfer a drawing to my painting surface, I'll add a few adjustment layers that will break this down into a simplified value map. The first will convert the color image to black and white. There's a dialog box with sliders, but the default is okay. On top of this, I add another adjustment layer with levels. Another adjustment box pops up, but I leave it alone for now. Finally, I'll make a posterized adjustment layer which reduces the value steps to a limited number. The default is 4 levels, but I generally change it to 2 or 3. More levels than that can be confusing. I really want a pattern that I can quickly transfer to my painting surface and isn't too fussy. After the posterization layer is set, I'll drop back down into my levels layer and move the slider points until the values are being distributed in a way that captures the feeling of the scene, and where there's hopefully some interesting ambiguity between objects and backgrounds. This will be the map that I follow as I lay out my drawing and my monochromatic underpainting, if there is one. The result is good, but there are still a lot of small incidental shapes that I'd rather not have to deal with. So I'm going to remedy that by creating another duplicate of my background image, which I'll label median, because I'm going to apply a filter to this level that will screen some of the small pixel groups. It's in the Filter pull-down menu under Noise. The best setting will depend on the resolution of the photograph. I want most of the little tiny shapes to go away, but I don't want to go so far that the image becomes too abstract for my purposes. Larger continuous shapes are desirable, but I want to keep some suggestion of details. I'll still be leaving behind a lot of the smaller shapes as I transfer the drawing, but this will help me assess which shapes are really important. I can still go back to my layers level and move those sliders around a bit. I'm looking for a 3-value graphical representation of what I saw that day. I want to give the impression of the bridge's construction, and that's still going to require some detailed shapes, but probably just in the closer sections. Further out on the bridge, the shapes can be more vague. I'm happy that the tones of the bridge piers are merging with the shadows, and it's looking like a few carefully placed light shapes will be enough to give the impression of the slowly moving water. Now I think I'm ready to commit to this crop of the picture. I'm going to finalize it by choosing my matte layer, and then with the magic wand tool, clicking somewhere inside the rectangle. I can then crop on the resulting selection. So the final products of this will be, first, a graphic posterized image that I can use for my digital projection, and second, a full color image that I can refer to during the later rounds of painting. Making these is just a matter of turning on and off the appropriate layers and saving JPEG versions. I can also save this as a layered TIFF or Photoshop file in case I decide to come back and look at things a different way. When it comes to creating a drawing for my projection, things will go rather quickly. I rarely spend more than a half hour doing this. In the process, I'll be simplifying and stylizing a lot of the shapes, and I won't even bother drawing things that are changeable like trees or clouds or leaves of grass. All those things I can freehand with my brush, and there's really no need to put down a drawing in advance. I hope that was helpful. I like to have several of these prepared images ready to go at any given time. That way, when I'm ready to work on the easel, I can get right to it without any hesitation. See you next time.